Okay, so I'm just doing a project and we have to research, like we choose a different genetic disorder and I chose um, cystic fibrosis. And one part of the assignment is to interview somebody, either you know them or you just like found them on the internet, and I thought of you. So yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Awesome.
So what's it like living with cystic fibrosis?
So that's kind of a tough question actually, because that the answer to that question has changed a lot in the last 5 years. So for most of my life, it meant I had to. So what CF does is it changes some of your DNA so that your body isn't able to process salt properly. So a lot of the fluids are thicker, and if fluids are thicker, then my lungs can't get I can't cough stuff out of my lungs as easily because the mucus is stuck in there and it messes with my digestive system a lot. So that meant I had to eat like a lot more calories. Like normal people are supposed to have 2,000 calories a day. I had to take in 3,000 calories a day just to maintain my weight. So I was malnourished and
Hmm.
underweight for like my entire childhood, even though I was taking in like more calories than would ever be reasonable.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a lot of CF impacts almost every organ in my body. And the body is constantly working to try and keep itself working despite all of those malfunctions, if you will, which takes a lot more
Yeah.
energy on top of that. So I'm taking in, almost 3,000 calories, but my digestive system is only giving my body, is only able to absorb, less than 2,000 of those. And my body
Hmm.
needs more than 2,000 of those to keep everything running. It's using more energy than a normal person's body because it's trying to keep up with
Yeah.
everything that's going wrong. Um, so it meant I needed to get more sleep as well to try and increase that energy. When you're sick, when you have like the flu or something, you need to get more rest so your body can take care of that. I
Yeah.
basically always have some kind of illness, usually some form of lung infection. Um, and so I'm always fighting those off, and I always had to get more sleep. But recently, new meds have come out for CF, specifically Trikafta, came out at the end of 2019. Um, and it kind of changed everything. That it basically acts as um, a way to supplement what your body can't do. So my body, um, in the DNA, the CFTR protein, your there's a part of your DNA called the CFTR strand, and when the mRNA copies it, it creates the CFTR protein, and that protein allows salt to move between your cells and therefore lubricate all of the fluids in your body. My body doesn't have any of that protein, but Trikafta allows my body to effectively have that protein again, at least some of it. It doesn't cure the disease, but it helps a lot. So I have my lung functions have improved like 20% since then, which is unheard of. Um, like it CF is a progressive illness. So the longer time goes on, the worse your condition your body is in. The disease constantly progresses and becomes harder and harder to live with. So having such substantial improvement was completely unheard of. Other than one med that came out right before I was born that allowed me to live this long in the first place.
Yeah.
But so now I can work a normal day. I can work basically a full time job, only being in bed for 8 hours. Like during high school, I had to go to bed, but I had 10 hours of sleep. No one else had to do that. My friends were
Hmm.
getting by on 4 hours of sleep, and I had to be in bed for 10 hours. I'm like, how are you getting the homework done? I don't have that much time. But
Hmm.
now I don't need as much sleep. I eat a normal diet. I maintain my weight just fine. Um, there's still a lot of things that are wrong with my body, and Trikafta is the first thing that treats the disease directly rather than treating each of its individual symptoms. But I still have to take
Hmm.
a lot of medicine. Like here, you'll see in the video, I'm holding up my bin of medicine that I was filling this morning. I have to take a lot of medicine every day just to maintain my body. And taking care of my body is still practically a full time job. Um,
Yeah.
but right, it used to be like if if I forget a medicine or I forget a treatment, then within like a day or two, I will realize exactly what I forgot, and I'll like get on that and do it again, and remember to do it, because it'll be very obvious to me what I forgot and what's going wrong. Now with Trikafta, the biggest problem for me is not, it's not like, oh, I don't want to do these things. I need to do these things and I want to do them as well as possible to preserve my health in the future. But sometimes it's hard
Mhm.
to remember to do them because it just doesn't make a noticeable impact. I know it's making an impact. The numbers, like my pulmonary function tests, my lung function tests, show that it makes a difference. But in my
Mhm.
day to day, I don't notice that difference anymore, which is awesome, but it's also a little bit difficult. I have to remember everything without being reminded by my body. I can't tell what's going wrong anymore. I have to remember to do it right in the first place. So it's a blessing,
Yeah.
a huge blessing, but it also makes things just a little bit more difficult. But that was a really
Mhm.
long answer to a very simple question, but my bad.
No, you get lots of information. That was great. Um, is so. Oh, I was gonna ask a question. Crap. Um, I don't remember what I was gonna ask.
Happens to all of us.
um, oh, right, right, right. So, is how old are you?
I am almost 21 years old.
Okay, okay. And is that like, are you like, is was that expected for you to live so long? And
So again, like the answer is no. A few years before I was born, a medicine called Pulmazine came out, and it didn't treat CF directly like Trikafta does, but it treated a side effect of CF that was specific to CF. So the thick mucus in the lungs, it helped to break down that mucus, um, and allowed people with CF to get lung infections out much more easily. And so before that, that came out like late 1996, and we didn't really have data on it until 5 years later. And I was born in 2001. So when I was
Mhm.
born, we didn't know what the impact of Pulmozen would be on the CF lifespan. And it turns out it had a increase of about 20 years, to the CF lifespan, and they didn't know that at the time. And I was born with a lot of complications. I had short gut, or well, I think it was meconium ileus, which resulted in short gut, which effectively means part of my intestines were in a knot, and that basically was what told them,
Mm.
hey, we need to test for CF. Is uh, that kind of a problem with the intestines? I don't actually know how that translates, like from having your intestines in a knot. I don't know how CF would cause that, but anyway. And then I was like copper, like penny copper was my skin color, and obviously like
Oh.
that because that was because I had a cirrhotic liver. Like my liver was not processing contaminants out of my bloodstream properly, as if like I was a lifelong alcoholic. Like that's how damaged my liver was. And yeah, so when I was born, my parents were told I would probably not live to go to school. Um, and then at some point over the next couple of months, you might not notice, but cirrhotic livers can heal. That's one of the human body is amazing in what it can do to try and fix things that are going wrong. And so, even though cirrhotic liver is very common with people with CF, mine was apparently not bad enough to the point where it was actively degrading. So my body was actually able to
Mm.
heal itself. And at one point, my one of my doctors walked into my room and said, "Where is he?" They didn't recognize me because my liver had started working enough to clear up my skin to be a normal color. They didn't recognize me because they were looking for the copper colored baby. Um, uh, and so, those little things. And then, of course, there's Pulmozyme. And so they saw a baby with CF, with a cirrhotic liver that had to have multiple um, surgeries in the first few days of his life, and who took 4 months just to get out of the NICU. Um, and yeah, obviously that is not an optimistic scenario. But then, the cirrhotic liver cleared itself up. Um, CF life expectancy increased by 20 years over the next 20 years. When I was born, CF life expectancy was around 24 years, I think. And now it is like cresting over 40. And it's probably going to go
Wow.
up much more from that because, again, Trikafta, which has probably done more for my health, for people's Trikafta has done more for the health of people with CF than any
Yeah.
other medication before it. So it's probably going to add even more than 20 years to the lifespan, like Pulmazam did. So it's
Hmm.
conceivable with Trikafta that the life expectancy will surpass 60 years. And, in that time, probably more research will be done that will allow it to hopefully um, continue to progress so that I can live a normal lifespan. But no, when I was
Yeah.
born, that was absolutely not expected to be the case. I wasn't expected to live to be 6, much less 60. And it's
Oh
purely
wow.
the research that has allowed that to happen.
That's amazing. Um, and oh my gosh, I keep forgetting what I'm gonna say. um, it, have you, are you, is your disease the same one where you can't be around other people with the same thing?
So yes, I talked earlier about lung infections and how people with CF, it's really easy for us to get stuff trapped in our lungs. Um, a lot of people, so your lungs have like basically microscopic hairs in them called cilia that are designed
Yeah.
to keep stuff off of the walls of the lungs and kind of allow them to uh, get get off the walls of the lungs and float out into the air so that it can be coughed up. And those cilia are lubricated by the mucus in the lungs. And if that mucus is too thick, like people in CF, those microscopic hairs are basically lying flat. They're not poking out and helping stuff to stay in the air. So people with CF have a lot of stuff trapped in their lungs that normal people can just cough out, but people with CF
Yeah.
get it trapped. So you can breathe in these illnesses and just breathe them back out, but people with CF can pass them between themselves and between each other. So it's like all these different diseases that most people don't catch, but only people with CF can catch because their lungs don't know how to get rid of them. They're not able to get rid of
Yeah.
them. Um, and so yeah, like during COVID, everyone's learned, hey, we need to keep 6 feet apart from each other because that's roughly the distance that particulates of the zero point 0.3 nanometer size can travel through air. It's actually a really neat physics
Mhm.
equation that dictates like 6 feet is how far basically any particulate matter. Anyway, never mind. That's a whole different discussion. Anyway, like this whole 6 feet apart rule is something I've lived my whole life. People used
Mm.
to that during COVID, but I've kind of lived with that fear my whole life. Like, there's no indication outwardly that someone has CF. So someone could be in the very close vicinity around me, like at a theme park or something, and have CF, and we could just be like stuck in this area, and I could be getting something from them and not even know it. That's just something that was always in my head. And now having seeing everyone's reaction to living like that has kind of been interesting. But yeah, I've always lived with like this notion of someone could have an illness, someone could have CF and have a bacteria that I do not have, and I could catch it from them if I get too close to them, and I won't know any of that. But
Yeah.
if you know that they have CF, yes, you absolutely like stay more than 6 feet apart so that you can't. It's less likely for you to contract that. But like, sure, there's only 70,000 of us in the world that have this illness, but I've like been at a theme park before, like in a queue for a ride, and seen someone with a Great Strides T-shirt, which is a CF fundraiser, and like I
Oh,
panicked. I panicked.
yeah.
Like it. I've just been living like that my whole life, so
Wow.
yeah, it's just very interesting to see how the whole world reacts to living that same way.
Mm. Um, do I think I remember one time going over to your house and I think it might have been a breathing machine, maybe?
Okay, so yeah, real quick, I'm going to. I don't have a video going. Well, okay, let's try to not fall backwards on my face. Oh, my legs are numb. Let's not do that. So, Well, this lighting is horrible, but yes, I do have this is a breathing treatment vest, and it used to be one that basically I put the vest on, and a machine the size of a microwave would inflate it and then quickly inflate and deflate it with pressurized air. But that pressurized air would send shock waves into my chest, and those shock waves would help break up the mucus in my lungs. Now it's just a vest that I wear that's battery powered, and I can just do it um, and just be walking around and do whatever I need to without being encumbered by a machine. I used to have to sit next to an outlet with my microwave sized air compressor hooked up to it with my like pneumatic tubes hooked up to my vest, and I have to sit there for a half an hour every morning and a half an hour every night doing it. And now I do that same half-hour treatment just with this, which is loud when it first starts up.
Yeah.
It's much quieter. It's completely portable. So again, it's just the little things that that research has changed. Like this is something that has been researched to be able to work. Like these are just motors that drive like giant versions of the vibration motor in your phone, and there's 8 of them, 4 on the front and 4 on the back of this, that send those vibrations into my chest. And they're just powered by a big battery. Um,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I have to do that for an hour a day, a half hour in the morning and a half hour at night. But and I also have to do like the same kind of treatments that asthmatics have to do. Um, so there's like Zopanex, you might have heard of. That's a treatment that is sometimes used for asthma.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do that with you've seen the masks that people breathe through with medication delivered to them. Um,
Oh yeah, I've seen
basically, it's just an air compressor that has a tube that goes to a mask, and that air goes through the liquid medicine and aerosolizes it. It creates a mist that is then breathed in. And again, I have this that does exactly that, but I can do my Pulmozyme is one of those treatments that I have to breathe in, and I can do it off of this battery powered thing now, and so I'm completely unencumbered when I have to do my treatments every morning and every night. And so Pulmozyme was one of those medicines that was developed for CF, and then there's this, literally sodium chloride. One of those things that I put in that mask and breathe in as a vapor is salt water. Several years ago, they noticed that in Australia, people with CF had their lung function significantly increase around Christmas, and they couldn't figure out why until they realized most people in Australia live near the ocean. And in Australia, Christmas time is around summer, so all these Australian CF kids were surfing around Christmas time and breathing in the salt water from the ocean, and that helped their lung function significantly. So now everyone just has a medicinized salt water that we just breathe in every day.
That's cool.
So that salt that our bodies isn't able to get into our mucus and thin it out, we just breathe in that salt water, and it does the same thing. It helps lubricate that mucus in our lungs and helps us cough stuff up and helps us keep those illnesses out of our lungs. And right now, I just had a culture taken last month, and I'm only growing staph right now, which is a completely normal thing. Like you can't have CF and not have staph, but that's the only thing that I have in my lungs right now, which is amazing thanks to all these
Yeah.
advancements in the research. And like it absolutely boggles my mind.
Wow. I have another question. Do you ever feel like CF kind of controls your life, or did you feel like that before?
So yeah, like I said, for the longest time, most of my life, so when I was born, CF life expectancy was around 24 years, and when the data came in showing how much Pulmozyme increased that, it settled in around 35 and was slowly increasing towards 40. Like this 35 to 40, it kind of plateaued around there. It had a big jump of about 10 years, and then it plateaued. So like as I was coming to
Mm.
understand this all, I was seeing this age, this life expectancy kind of plateau. And so I sort of started developing this mentality of, okay, well, I'm going to live 40 years plus a little more. So I kind of developed this mentality of, I have half as much time on this earth as anyone else, so I need to do twice as much with it. And that was my mentality during high school. And sure, that did great things for me. When you have the mentality of, I want to get twice as much done as anyone else, that's really motivating. But it's
Yeah.
it's the right thing for the wrong reason. um and so as Trikafta has sort of changed that narrative, and I'm realizing I could potentially live a full life, that sort of changed the way I have to think about my motivations. Like it CF used to completely dictate how I motivated myself, and now I've sort of had to shift that over the last little while. And that's awesome that I'm able to like uh, start to live my life motivated in like normal ways. But yeah, it absolutely controlled um, how I motivated myself and how I made my decisions for the longest time.
Wow.